Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I'm doing a book review or first impression of Tome of Annihilation. This is the new storyline put out by Wizards of the Coast, and it is basically a sandbox adventure with dinosaurs, jungles, Chult and undead. And then we also have a very famous lich involved. You can pick up this book from your game stores. The book depository for anybody who doesn't live in North America has free shipping. It's pretty cheap from there. Otherwise, Amazon. You can find a Amazon affiliate link in my description down below of this video and purchase it if you want to. And this adventure is designed for levels 1 to 11. Although my understanding is you could play it at a higher level and it would still work out perfectly fine. A death curse has befallen everyone who has been raised from the dead. Its victims are rotting away and all efforts to reverse the decay have failed. The souls of the dead are being stolen one by one and trapped inside a necromantic artifact. Only its destruction will free the trapped spirits and allow the dead to be raised once more. All paths lead to Chult, a mysterious land of volcanoes, jungles, and the ruins of fallen kingdoms. Below them all awaits a deadly tomb. The trap is set. Will you take the bait? So I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. My understanding is there's already been quite a few reviews on this book, so it's not like you won't find information on it already. There is a disclaimer and obviously a contents page. I'll read out the disclaimer because most people want to hear the disclaimer at some point. This adventure will make your players hate you. The kind of simmering hatred that eats away at their souls until all that remains is a dark little sphere of annihilation, where their hearts used to be. P.S. Don't forget to tear up their character sheets. So if you haven't figured it out, and I certainly figured it out, this adventure is supposed to be even more lethal than the legendary Tomb of Horrors. So somebody has decided that they needed to up the ante with Tomb of Horrors, and they've created the Tomb of Annihilation, which is why we've got that title, with the annihilation being the important factor. So the contents page has a dramatis persona, an introduction. We have there's basically only broken up to in about 5 chapters, which concerns me with a sandbox type adventure. And then we have a lot of appendices and a lot of stat blocks, including a Serac, who is the main villain. The dramatis persona I think is a great idea because not only does it have their name, it also includes name pronunciation, a description of them, and what page you can find information on that character. So we start off with an introduction and a basic overview of the story. I'm not going to go into detail with it because it's pretty simple in terms of its story layout. Running of the adventure is explained, and yes, you will need the monster manual, and Volo's Guide to Monsters is also listed as a book you would need, but the stat blocks are included in the adventure, so you don't need to worry about that. This adventure basically has what's called the death curse, and essentially this death curse makes it really difficult for a character to last any length of time, because if they are raised from the dead, they lose a certain number of hit points from their maximum, which is 20, and each day that passes, the soulmonger takes another hit point from them until eventually they reach 0, and then their soul is sucked away to basically populate something else. There is a meat grinder mode, which basically means when you're making death dying saves, it's going to be harder. Instead, a 15 is required to be successful. Now this is a variant option, you do not have to use it. Soul devouring is covered, how to replace characters, and really this adventure is all about killing a lot of characters and you have to constantly replace them. Getting attached to your characters could be a problem, particularly if you've got people who don't like a lot of character death. There's the ticking clock, so there is supposed to be a pushing process, so you can't just take your time, you have to move through the story pretty fast. It explains some elements to character advancement, but really it doesn't go into milestones. It does give you a basic range of what your level might be expected depending on where you are in the story, broken down to the port, the land of Chult, dwellers of the Forbidden City, the Feign of the Night Serpent, and the Tomb of the Nine Gods. That is probably going to be the biggest problem I find with this adventure, in that you're really going to have a whole lot of people who aren't necessarily going to be the right level as you progress through this story. Goes over how to start the adventure, gives you some character hooks. Not just character hooks for the adventure, but they're listed in terms of their background, which I think is a fantastic idea. It's great. We get a lot of information on Chult, including the rather odd goblins that stack themselves in a ridiculous fighting style. It goes over the different races that you might encounter. It talks about Port Naizaru, I think I got it right, and yes, that does suggest there is dinosaurs, a lot of dinosaurs, and dinosaur racing. Now it's broken up, as you can see, into a series of paragraph length side quests. You get a great looking map, I think it's fantastic, and different locations. A few characters are highlighted, so reasonably easy to track and get your way through this section. I think this is actually not too badly laid out. I will point out that this adventure does not have an index. Now that concerns me. I like the fact that they have at least considered giving you decent sized maps. Half size and full page maps are probably better, although this map, considering what it's got there, I still feel it could have been a full size along this way rather than just half page. It goes over the different factions that are represented in this particular adventure, and you don't just get the standard 5. There are other particular individuals or organisations or factions included. So Harper's the Flaming Fist, Lord's Alliance, Order of the Gauntlet, the Red Wizards of Feign, the Yipitika Society, the Zents are included, and also I just went past the Emerald Enclave obviously as well. Things that you can do, so yes, you can buy special items, and that does sort of suggest that you can buy magical items. Not necessarily anything that you want, but you certainly can. Dinosaur Racing is detailed, as well as having the ability to bet. You will have to find yourself a guide at the port, and it gives you a whole series of NPCs or guides that they can select, and then a whole lot of different rumours that they might come across while they're exploring Chult's port. And then we cover chapter 2, the land of Chult, and this is the expedition section where they're going to explore the area of Chult and learn and track down, find information, because I don't necessarily know exactly where they're going, so a lot of it's possible to get lost. Navigation will take into effect. Dehydration, exhaustion, things like that, disease obviously, lots of random encounters. There are location maps included, and there is a dragon turtle included in this adventure. It's like the first part of this adventure. Once they leave the port, they are going to be on a boat and having to contend with a dragon turtle who pretty much just wants their treasure, and as long as they cough it all up, they'll probably be fine. Lots, as I said, lots of really good maps, but this is broken up into a whole string of short side treks or quests that you would string together as they explore the location. This adventure book does include a pull-out map for the Dungeon Master and the players, so you will all get a map that you can utilise. So very nicely laid out. As I said, each section is broken up into small pieces, so you don't have to try and figure out everything. My concerns with something like this is, as a Dungeon Master, where they can potentially go just about anywhere, there's a vast amount of material that you would have to prepare. And because there's no index, you can't necessarily find everything that you need easily from just a contents page which doesn't list every single side quest, so that you can easily find exactly what you're currently working with. So that means you're going to potentially have to read about 200 pages. A really cool looking character here, Nanny Poo Poo, or is it Poo Paw? Who knows? One of those. We'll just keep flipping through here. Great maps. I think as long as they keep the maps the full size, they're really going to work fine for you. One of the things that has been discussed is there's not necessarily going to be enough experience points earned, if you're using experience points, to fill out a character and get them to level 11 and you may have to start further up, say at a higher level, so you may have to build in a lot of random encounters for this particular book. Chapter 3 is Dwellers of the Forbidden City, so we're now getting into, we've done a lot of exploration and side quests, so now we're getting into exploring the Forbidden City. And yes, there is a Tyrannosaurus Rex that spews out zombies. That is actually in this book, which is the craziest thing under the sun. I love the idea. Fantastic maps again. But given the amount of death that's going to take place, and there is instructions to try and make this humorous, this particular adventure, simply because death is going to be quite prevalent. Lots of different races and creatures. Chapter 4 covers Feign of the Night Serpent, and this is where we're dealing with the Yanti. So we're now trekking into a different location. There's lots of slave labourers that you can sort of build into your adventure. So getting inside is going to be part of the problem, getting inside the temple. There is a roster for the temple and how its reinforcements work. A great map, Feign of the Night Serpent, and then of course all the locations are detailed, and they give you the standard layout, which is a good header followed by the readout text, which is usually highlighted, and then all of the monsters that might be utilized are bolded, and then if there's a section on treasure, usually they have at the bottom a section that states yes, there is treasure and this is what it is, such as over here, which means it's really easy to find things, which is good. It's going to be necessary to run this adventure. Then we have chapter 5, Tomb of the Nine Gods. Now you can see we're only on 125, and this is a sandbox adventure essentially, where they can essentially go anywhere. And now we're into the tomb. The tomb has got many levels. It's quite deadly. It's obviously been designed and put together in a way so that it can rival the Tomb of Horrors, which I find concerning, because you're really going to need people who are willing to deal with having like a handful of characters available. It talks about the different spell effects. Spells work differently in this location. The trickster gods are detailed as well, and there apparently are about 9 of those. It talks about how to role play the different spirits in this location, and we haven't seen it yet, but not only do you get a map for each there's many levels, so you get a map for each level, but you get a whole lot of player handouts, which I'll show you near the end. So there are at least 6 levels. We're on to level 2 here, and each level is probably more deadly than the last. Traditionally, with most Dungeons and Dragons adventures, particularly in the older days when they were first coming out, the further down you go, the more deadly that level becomes. There are a bunch of traps detailed, and also not just traps. There are situations and things that can take place that will not just test them in terms of their problem solving and their combat, but also there's the sheer will to continue on might be part of the issue as well. So we're on level 4, the Chamber of Horrors, and obviously each level is themed. There's something else going on at each level, so as you progress it won't be the same sort of thing. So that's to stop you from getting bored. Obviously, the Cog of Rot. Level 5, Gears of Hate. So as you can see now, this is the Juggernaut, the stone Juggernaut. This thing is supposed to be able to really wreak havoc on you, and they've actually got a miniature for this particular piece of destruction, so you can actually utilize it if you want to, or maybe you make your own, or you just pretend and use your imagination. It includes flying monkeys. Level 6, the Cradle of the Dead God. Now, I'm not sure that this is necessarily a bad adventure. What concerns me, now this is supposed to be the nursery. This is the Dead God Nursery. And as you can see, if any of you have ever come across one of these, which you probably haven't, it's an atropole. An atropole is like an embryo or a fetus for a developing god, and a Serac is actually trying to create an evil god. seems like a really sensible thing to do. In the past, Serac has tried to turn himself into a god. I don't know why he's downsized his ambitions, but apparently he has. And then we tie it up near the end. So the whole idea is to try and deal with the atropole. If you deal with the atropole and break the curse, then people can start raising themselves from the dead again, and life continues on nicely. There are included in this book an appendices. Appendices A has character backgrounds. This is the anthropologist and the archaeologist, which I think are great additions. I think that was a great idea. Appendices B is random encounters. Now I'm on page 193. You can see how much more of the book is left. There's quite a lot. And there are just charts and charts and charts. 2 pages followed by details on monsters for random encounters. And it goes on. And we're still going. Now my concern is they have included, some of these look like they actually required a bit of work. But a lot of them feel like they are things that a dungeon master could have created, so I don't feel that this particular section is terribly helpful. Some of it's alright, some of it's not. Appendices C is discoveries, things that you can discover, and this is flora and fauna. There's lots of new flora, but there's also fauna. Magic items, you get a few new magic items as well. This is one of the best parts. Appendices D has monsters and NPCs, and Akarac's stat block is included. He is challenge rating 23, but you won't necessarily fight him. The real test is trying to get through his tomb. If you can get through his tomb, you've been successful. I don't think that a lot of people are going to be quite so happy with that. I like the idea of having these lobster folk people. This is awesome. The unicorn bunny. So some interesting different monsters we haven't seen before. This is your main villain. This is the main thing that your players will be putting themselves up against. Lots of dinosaurs are included. Additional dinosaurs we didn't have before. A few different species. Dragon bait. Now I remember dragon bait from an old arcade or video game, and I'm glad to see that dragon bait has returned. As I said, flying monkeys are included. The frog hemoth has been also included, and giant 4-armed gargoyles, and the flail snail. So really weird monsters. This thing is absolutely chock-a-block with odd, bizarre monsters we haven't necessarily seen before, and I think that is probably one of the better elements of this particular adventure, simply because it's got things we haven't seen or used or had to deal with. This looks very exciting. The Raznes. I think that's how it's pronounced anyway. Stone Juggernaut, and a whole lot of other different creatures, including flora that can cause lots of problems, velociraptors, veggie pygmies, things like that. A few NPCs that are going to be important throughout the story. And we have an undead or a zombie gorillion. I think that's a fantastic idea. The Zorbo, this Zorbo is an interesting monster. I'm not too sure exactly what it does, but my understanding is it's quite peculiar in how it interacts with the player's characters. And then of course we get this picture of this undead T-Rex that vomits out zombies. Fantastic idea. Love it. I think that's one of the selling points for this. And we get a player handout which you can photocopy in smaller version and give the players so they can fill out and populate their location. There are handouts, details and information on a variety of different things. There's a huge number of handouts, which I think is a great move. We get some more, the Forbidden City, we get another map, and it takes all the markers off, so it's unmarked, so you can give this as a player handout if you want to. A lot of puzzles and information on how to solve puzzles. It's absolutely chock-a-block with them, and really interesting ones. And included at the back are the trickster gods, which you can photocopy, cut out, and that includes their flaws and powers and so forth. So this is the pull-out map that comes in the back. This is the side that the Dungeon Master would use, and on the other side includes the map that you would use or lay out for your players if you wanted them to have a larger map. The only problem with that is, although you can pull it out and show it to the players, you might not necessarily want them writing or drawing on the back of this thing. I'm going to flip it over so you can see. So the other side of the map includes only the areas that they know about, and the rest they have to fill in themselves. So this is like an old style hex grid exploration, sandbox adventure. We've seen this sort of thing before. The Island of Dread or Isle of Dread is a good example of it, and they've tried to reproduce that same idea. Most hex grid adventures that require exploration and that are a sandbox usually require a lot of work. This adventure is absolutely massive, so as a result of that, it could take quite a lot of reading and preparation by the Dungeon Master. My view of the Tome of Annihilation is it's a good product, but there is absolutely no index in this book, and it is a sandbox adventure, and it needed to have an index to make life easy for the Dungeon Master. Because there is no index, it could be quite difficult. That is what concerns me about it. This is my first impression. It's not a full review. I have not run this adventure. I have not played in this adventure, but that is my final sort of assessment of it. Look, you can still buy this if you want from the book depository or from Amazon. I have an Amazon affiliate link below if you want to. If you found this review, or should I say flip through or first impression, helpful or informative, please share, like and subscribe. If you have any questions about Tome of Annihilation, put them in the comments. If you think I left something out, please put it in the comments. And until next time, keep rolling those 20s.